Start. So, yeah, perfect. So hello everyone and welcome to our next IWA Live Talk. I would like to make a little throwback to the last talk. So the September edition was with the topic night vision and thermal imaging and was recorded live from our consumer show Hubana. And you can rewatch the video on our YouTube channel if you haven't seen that before. So before I would like to introduce you to our guests today, I would like to give you some general information. This session will be recorded as every session and will be published on our YouTube channel. So everybody who cannot join us until the end, feel free to rewatch on our YouTube channel. So if you have any questions to our speakers, you can ask them directly in the chat and we will answer all the questions at the end. So now let's start. Seth and Jens are talking about the latest developments in lead and non-lead bullets and will give some practical tips for hunting and long-range shooting today. In addition, Seth will present the latest bullets from Hornady in this IWA Live Talk, which was launched yesterday. So I would like to give a warm welcome to Jens, the marketing director at Outdoor Marketing International, and Seth, marketing communication manager at Hornady. Jens, you would like to start and will give us some general information. So please feel free to start now.
Yeah, hello. Thank you. And hello, dear viewers. Today, we don't want to talk about the necessity or the sense of lead-free bullets, but we want to talk about increasing popular hunting bullet and its latest developments and give some practical tips for its use. And since the IWA is always about staying in contact with our customers and presenting new products, we do that with two brand new products from Hornady, and I give the word to Seth.
Yes, thank you for having us on. I appreciate it. And thanks for listening in, everyone. Yes, we do have some new products available in the monolithic bullet world, and I'm particularly excited and proud to introduce those to you. This technology of monolithic bullets has certainly been popular for a while, and we really took a hard look at how can we make it better and how can we optimize using a lead-free bullet for the best performance on game that we can possibly get. And we have two new products here. We have two bullets, and we've also got some ammo lines that will feature those bullets. So the first one that I'd like to talk about is our CX, and that stands for copper alloy expanding. And I brought up an image here that you can look at. Those are our new CX bullets, and you can see it on the cannular grooves, those grooves on the bullets. We really optimize that shape to help reduce the drag and get as much of a ballistic coefficient increase as we possibly can. And I've got a video here queued up if you guys would like to watch that just kind of goes over our new CX line. Mm-hmm.
A solid breakthrough in performance. The Hornady CX Copper Alloy Expanding Bullet.
The CX bullet came to be as a natural progression of finding better ways to make cool products. And we found some ways to make a small improvement. And a small improvement on paper, in this case, really creates a big improvement downrange for the user.
CX bullets feature the advanced heat shield tip that resists aerodynamic heating and provides a consistently high BC.
At Hornady, we don't rest on our laurels. And if we come up with an adaptation or a feature that we can incorporate in a new product, we're most certainly going to do that if we're going to provide the shooter with a better product for their hunting use, their match shooting use. The ELDX and the ELD Match were the first bullets we had that featured the heat shield tip. Adapting that technology now to the CX bullet was just a natural fit, something we felt like we had to do.
The groove geometry on the CX bullet is enhanced to maximize aerodynamic performance while effectively reducing bearing surface and fouling.
Generally, what you see is with a monolithic style projectile of the same weight, it's going to have higher pressure than a cup and core, a traditional cup and core bullet. They're softer, they give easier as they're engraving into the rifling. The monolithic obviously is very hard. And so placing those grooves on there allows that material that is moved by the engraving of the projectile into the rifling, it moves into a relief instead of it just trying to displace it all the way across the back of the bearing surface of the bullet.
These design features combine for some of the highest ballistic coefficients in the monolithic, non-traditional hunting bullet category.
Certainly the copper alloy expanding style bullet is popular for lots of reasons. One, they're extremely tough. They're very robust. We found a way to make this one more accurate than it was before. It's downrange ballistics. The exterior ballistics on it are the best. Any bullet in that general class. Basically bridge that gap between your normal shorter range hunting and giving you the option to hunt at almost any distance you choose.
CX bullets are constructed of rugged monolithic copper alloy that retains 95% or more of their original weight for devastating terminal performance.
So the terminal performance of the CX line is going to be very similar to the GMX that many shooters have been using for years. The advantage is that you're going to be able to get that same performance over more distance. So where the GMX traditionally stopped expanding at 400-ish yards, generally speaking, you're going to get maybe closer to 500 now with the aerodynamic advantage of the CX bullet. So it gives you that same tried and true performance that you've relied on for years, but allows you to do it at a little bit further distances if you're capable of making those shots.
Available in factory-loaded ammunition in the Hornady Outfitter, custom and Superformance lines, as well as component bullets for reloaders.
Up until now, the only hunting projectiles that incorporate the heat shield tip have been the ELDX. With the new CX line incorporating the heat shield tip, we can now add that into our Ford-off bullet library, and hunters can have the most accurate predictions possible with both the ELDX and the CX line of projectiles.
Lead-free and fully California compatible, CX bullets are the ultimate non-traditional option for medium and large game. CX bullets from Hornady.
Yes. So that's the new CX bullet. And that bullet will be available in calibers from 6mm all the way up to 375. And it will also be available in our Outfitter and some Superformance ammunition.
Very interesting. Is that for the main takeaways? What I've seen is that the bullet has an increased downrange performance, which also gives you more backup for traditional hunting distances. So you have more backup energy and speed on the target, which that type of bullet needs. I mean, that type of bullet, from my perspective, gives two things to hunters these days. First, we have a practically fragment-free bullet. It means that wasn't possible with lead so far,
right?
Except of African hunting bullets, which also are mostly stable. But that is something that a lot of hunters like. They like a bullet that passes through, that remains is full retaining weight, gives good terminal performance. But the other thing also, these bullets need a little more impact speed. They need a little bit more speed on the target, and that is what that bullet, for example, does, and that points out how important that is.
Exactly, and I think that fragment-free is important. There's only so much meat on an animal, and obviously you want to preserve that as much as possible. And these things, the CX bullet routinely retains 95% of its weight or more. And another benefit is you almost always get an exit wound. They usually don't stay inside the animal. But like you said, Jens, the CX bullet and monolithic bullets as a whole, they really perform best with more speed. And when you're shooting animals, really closely at 25 or 50 meters from the muzzle, and it's not as much of a big deal. However, when you start shooting a little bit further, 100, 150, 200, 250 meters out, the new design of the CX will help it retain velocity longer downrange. So when you do impact that animal, it's got as much speed as possible. And the more speed, the better the performance, the more of that shock you'll get on game.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and then you mentioned that it's available in 2 ammo lines.
That's right. Yep.
The tried and true Super Performance line, which is very popular in Europe. It's give you 30 to 60 meters per second more speed than a standard load, which is appreciated for longer distances, but also for a better effect on game on driven hunts, for example, where you need everything you can get. And also in the very popular shorter rifles that we know, shorter barrel rifle that we have here, due to the silencers that are used in a lot of countries. So that gives you that extra backup that you want for this hunting application. So that's good. And I think at the same time you said it's also available in the outfitter line, which is more for the general hunting ammunition, which is, as you said, it's gives you a good balance between effect on the game, but also in low meat damage, and that is more for your through the year general hunting line.
Right, and we made that outfitter ammunition with a nickel plated case, and then it's sealed rather on the case mouth and on the primer. We just go through a couple extra steps to make sure that the outfitter ammunition is useful in wet conditions and muddy conditions, in environments that are really austere. We sealed it on both sides, plus the CX bullet. So yeah, the outfitter is really a premier line, and it's loaded to, like you had mentioned, traditional velocities. It doesn't use the Superformance propellant technology like we use in the Superformance line, but it is really a premier product, and features that new CX bullet. When we originally launched the outfitter line, it had the GMX bullet in there. And now moving forward, where you have traditionally saw a GMX bullet, you will now see the more advanced CX bullet replace it.
Very good. And also, I think you did tweak a little bit the bullet weight choices that you have. I think in the Super Performance line, we have more the light to medium weight bullets with a higher speed, and in the outfitter line, you go a little bit medium to heavier bullets. So you give a lot of choices to the hunters to find the exact ammo for their needs. Huh?
Exactly. Yep. With the Super Performance, like we've mentioned, these bullets really thrive with high velocity. And so the Super Performance line, we opt for the lighter bullets or the medium weight bullets for caliber, so we can really get that velocity up. And in the outfitter line, loaded to a more traditional velocity, that's a good ammo SKU to put the heavier bullets for caliber in. And again, available from 243 Winchester up to 375 Ruger in factory ammo, and then in 6mm and 375 for reloading component bullets.
Very good. I think it also a lot of people will be happy that you stayed with the material of the GMX, which is proven and well received, because it has some advantages.
It really does. The copper zinc alloy, which is the alloy that we use of copper and zinc, not just pure copper. And the reason we do that, the advantages that it gives us, is when you add zinc to copper, it helps it be a little bit more lubrous. It's a little more slippery, for lack of a better term. And going down your barrel, it helps deposit less copper in your barrel when compared to a solid copper projectile. So that's why we use the zinc. And then from a terminal performance standpoint, it makes it very, very tough, where it's not brittle. It doesn't make it soft by any means, but the petals, as they shear back, those petals aren't brittle like a solid copper would be, and have a propensity to shear off. So it really gives us two benefits. One, it helps us foul less in the barrel. And then two, on game, it helps it hold together as one destructive mass. And that's why we choose to use a copper zinc alloy instead of copper alone.
Oh, very good. From my perspective, also what people like is that they can switch to an inexpensive training ammo for the range. They can switch to a traditional cup and core bullet like a BTHB or an FMJ. If you want to practice in the shooting cinema or on the range, they go back to the bullet and don't have to fear that there's a big shift in impact.
Right.
Different materials in the barrel, right?
Yep, that is true. And it's no secret that using homogeneous bullets that are either solid copper or a copper alloy like we use, they do foul your bore more in comparison to a lead core bullet. However, by using the zinc alloy that we use, it's significantly less than solid copper, and we do want to minimize that point of impact shift as best as we can.
Okay, perfect. I think you mentioned in the beginning that there's a second new bullet.
Right. Yes, and this one, the second new bullet that we're introducing is called the ECX, the Extreme Copper Alloy Expanding, and we really made this one exclusively for our international customers. We wanted to take a look at what are the popular calibers and types of hunting that is encountered in Europe and other places internationally, and then make a bullet that specifically addressed those concerns and those types of hunts and those cartridges. And what we came up with was the ECX. When you compare it to the CX, you'll notice that it doesn't have quite of a pointy tip. It doesn't have that super sharp ogive that's found in the CX. However, it doesn't have a round nose profile either. What we wanted to do was look at accuracy first. With the ECX bullet, we're going to use the same copper alloy that we use in the CX, that was also used in the GMX, but we wanted to take a look at how can we make this the most accurate bullet out of a variety of chambers and throat designs and twist rates. And to do so, we really wanted to make that bearing surface portion of the bullet as long as we can, because a bullet with a nice long bearing surface gets great support in the barrel, and it helps it be accurate whether you've got a marginally slower twist rate or a faster twist rate or a really large throat or a small diameter and a long free bore or a short free bore. Again, these bullets were designed specifically to be accurate over a very large variety of cartridges and chambers. But we didn't want to give up ballistically what we would have if we made a round nose, that traditional round nose shape. They really have a low BC, a lot of drag. So we took that long bearing surface and we tried to make it as an aggressive as a ogive profile as we can. And since the copper alloy is such a rugged material, the best way to form that up is to put a flat tip on it. And that allows us to get the other side of what we focused on, which was terminal performance. They had to be accurate, but they had to perform. We want them to perform well downrange. So instead of making a round nose, we went with that longer ogive and then a flat tip. And that helps, one, the terminal performance on these things is fantastic. Because that flat polymer tip drives rearward into that large cavity, it really gives a lot of shock on game, on impact. And then we got some ballistic efficiency by making that longer ogive instead of using a round nose. And it has the same groove geometry that's featured on the CX. So we took a lot of design attributes from the CX and applied them here to the ECX. Now these are available in 6.5 up to 9.3, and they'll be available in Hornady International ammunition. So we'll have a bunch of reloading components available as well as factory loaded ammunition. We're really excited about this one.
Yeah, great. That's very interesting. I think a lot of people in Europe will appreciate that. As that these rifles over years, some of them have special requirements. They doesn't function with all these high BC bullets naturally, and it's I think it's really great to see that Hornady addresses that market and make a special tailored solution for those guns. So very, very cool.
Right, and that was one of our goals. Was one, we had to make it accurate, and when you go all over the world, a common chambering here in the US is not a common chambering in other places. So we really took a hard look at the accuracy side of things. And then when you use that copper zinc alloy with that flat tip, the terminal performance is simply incredible. And again, it was developed specifically for the international customer.
And what I also saw was a very positive surprise. You also added some metric calibers. So we have 7x57, 7x64 new in that line, and then the 8x57 and 9.3x62 amongst with 308 and 3006 and other popular calibers. So that's, I think, also very interesting for the European market.
Absolutely. And yeah, we didn't want to leave anybody out as best we could. It is an exciting bullet, and we expect it to be very popular because of its accuracy potential and because of how it performs on game. It absolutely is devastating.
Good to know. I mean, is that will replace the ETX bullet? Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep. We found just some better ways to make a better product, and that ETX was a good bullet. However, we found better ways to increase the energy and the velocity on game at all ranges, whether you're shooting at a traditional or a closer range, under 100 meters or out to say 300 meters. By choosing an ECX, you'll have more velocity on target, and that's important.
Yeah, I think that was the only if you want to say it all, weak point of the ETX was the range. It was well received because the accuracy also in guns that won't shoot with other bullets so good, and people like the performance on shorter ranges, but they know there was a limitation on range for these bullets. So I think that is good that you improved that as well.
Yep, and that all is attributed in the ECX's case to the shape of the grooves, and that we put that ogive profile on there. We made it about as steep as we could to increase that ballistic efficiency. And then by using a flat polymer tip, we didn't sacrifice any terminal performance. That thing expands really well down to about, I don't know the metric conversion, but about 2,000 feet per second. That's about the minimum velocity it takes to get a caliber and a half worth of expansion.
Yeah, that's a good talking point. 2,000 feet per second, that is 610 meters per second, which is a little bit lower than what other typical bullet in that category need. So that already shows that there is an improvement. If we use that as an example, as a practical tip, so if people don't know what distance can I hunt with my load in my rifle, there is a way to do that. If you know that minimum impact speed, which we do, 610 meters per second, I think that's also true for the CX, correct?
That's true, yes. The CX and the ECX, because of that material, they both initiate expansion very rapidly. And that's one of the big benefits of using a polymer tip, whether it be a flat point polymer like on the ECX or the spire shape on the CX. Both of those initiate expansion usually before 2 inches of penetration. They initiate that expansion very quickly. And that, again, that's important to help with that shock on impact.
Okay, so as a practical takeaway, as a hunter, what you can do is measure the speed of the load in your rifle, especially if you use shorter barrels, or as a thumb of rule, you can deduct 3.5 meters per second per centimeter barrel length from what is stated on the packaging, which is by legal ways based on a 61 centimeter proof barrel, a test barrel. So you deduct 3.5 meters per second per centimeters that you have shorter barrel. And then you take a ballistic calculator, like the free online calculator on the Hornady website. You put in your bullet weight, your speed, and the BC. And then you print out a sheet, and you can see at what distance you still have those 610 meters per second minimum. And then you know exactly to what distance you can use that bullet.
Absolutely. That's a responsible thing to do, is to know how far your bullet can perform. And in many cases, the CX and the ECX bullet perform at distances well beyond where most people are traditionally hunting. The CX, especially with that really long ogive shape, and then we changed the groove geometry, and we used our heat shield tip that's found in our ELDX bullets. That bullet, a lot of slipstream in that design, and they hold on to velocity really far downrange.
Yeah, I think that's it's a very smart way, and that shows what bullet design, what is state of the art these days. In the past, you had to use very strong calibers with a lot of recoil, a lot of powder to burn, to push a very blunt bullet downrange fast. And now if you see modern bullets, they lose practically half of the speed on distance than old conical shaped or flat tip bullets in the past. So I think it's a very smart way to make a bullet, because you don't need to have that bigger platform, the more powder that you burn, the stronger calibers and recoil, but you still have a very good, if not even better, downrange performance.
Absolutely. That's a great point. One other point I'd like to make about the ballistic efficiency of the bullets and their BCs. The BC values of all of our CX and ECX bullets, those are derived from the Doppler radar. And traditionally, before we had a Doppler radar, we used a method to measure BC, but it was done at a closer range. Now the BC values that we have are much more accurate. So I think that's important to note, that when you look at the BC values of these projectiles, they are about as accurate as you can measure a BC, because we use our Doppler radar to derive those. And for anyone out there that does shoot at extended ranges, the CX bullet is now offered in the 4DOF ballistic calculator that you can download on your cell phone, that uses drag coefficient instead of ballistic coefficient to determine trajectory. And those CX bullets will now be available in that calculator.
Oh, that's very good news. That's an industry first, to have a high-end non-lead hunting bullet and a ballistic calculator of that quality. So I think that's also very, very interesting to know. Thanks for that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else you want to cover, Seth? Sorry.
Well, I think we did a pretty good job describing what they are and who they're for. And I think just in conclusion, just to give a summary, the CX bullet, a little bit more aggressive profile, longer ogive, lower drag, a great copper alloy bullet for a variety of hunting, better suited for extended ranges. And the ECX bullet, that one, we got as much ballistic efficiency out of it as we could, but more of a traditional range bullet. I'm not sure we addressed that specifically, so I did want to mention that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's good for a conclusion for now. Rebecca, should we switch to the questions?
Yes, please. So we received a few questions in the chat, and we also received a few questions before, because every participant can ask us some question when registering for the talk. I would like to start with the questions in the chat, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Because these persons are online at the moment. So the first question is, which CU alloy is used for CX bullet?
That would be copper and zinc. So copper Cu on the periodic table, and zinc I think is Zn. That's a copper zinc alloy.
Okay.
Which is, sorry, just to interrupt, just to add to it, that is very, very similar to the jackets of all other Hornady bullets, correct?
That's correct. It's the same material that we found works best for our bullet jackets. Coincidentally, works really well when you make an entire projectile out of that material.
Okay. So the next question is, hello, do you have new information about non-lead 22 LR caliber ammo?
Unfortunately, I do not. Jens, I'm not sure if you do, but on the Hornady side, we don't manufacture any 22 long rifle, but I would anticipate that there's going to be a demand for a new projectile. I'm not sure we'll be involved, but.
Yeah, I think that is the caliber that suffers the most from switching to another material. And I mean, the question remains if that it's needed at all, if it's used on a closed circle like a range. But I know there is a few things out there, but due to that special twist rate that all these guns have, I think it's not easy to use a longer or lighter bullet in that case. So not from our point, unfortunately.
Okay, so Tom is asking a question in the chat and in advance, I think. So the first question is, have you got any statistics regarding accuracy and ballistics at different distances?
I don't have anything compiled. A lot of that has to do with how accurate of a system you have, not just the projectile. I can say that when we manufacture our hunting bullets, they all have an accuracy standard. I believe the accuracy standard for the CX is somewhere in the lines of, and again, I apologize, I don't know the metric conversions. I believe they have to shoot 0.6 of an inch or better at 100 yards before they'll start the press to run the bullets. So the bullets themselves are held to about a half MOA standard.
Okay, and so the second question of Tom was in advance, has the ballistic of metallic ammunition to improve enough to be used in Olympic competition, both rimfire and centerfire? What about the heavier loads for longer distances?
That's a somewhat irritating question, because rimfire is used in Olympics. That is the ammo that is used. All world records have been shot with it, so I think it is ballistically good enough. Especially the traditional with the lead bullet, and this is what sets all these great records. I mean, I think most disciplines looking at clean scores right now, so maximum scores are achieved. So of course it could always be a little bit better, but I think they already reached an extremely high standard. But centerfire, there is non-centerfire cartridge in Olympics to my knowledge. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But again, I mean, this is a goal of every manufacturer, and Hornady especially is driven by performance. So they never rest on their laurels. They always try to make a bullet better. And even if the A-tip is like I think at the moment the leading long-range bullet out there, which is the latest development and really state-of-the-art in bullet manufacturing at all. I think you're not resting, you still look for improving that as well, right?
Absolutely. We're always trying to make things better. That's one of the hallmarks of our company, and I think why we've been around for over 70 years as a family-owned company, is that we are never happy with where we're at. We're always trying to make small incremental improvements, and you'll continue to see those improvements as technology continues to advance. That's for sure. The A-tip is great, but I'm sure there's a way we can make it better, and we're going to find it.
Okay, so Tom made an addition, but the Olympic question refers to the new bullets. So just
again,
to forward you this.
Since most rimfire bullets are used for Olympic disciplines, I think that is not a question we can answer. I would ask that question to traditional rimfire manufacturers. There's a lot of well-known companies out there in Europe and worldwide that making extremely well rimfire ammo. So I think that's a question for them, not for Hornady.
Okay. So the next question is from Keno. What is the minimum impact speed for deer hunting with a CX?
That would be 610 meters per second. And that's to get what we call caliber and a half. So to get the bullet to expand to its original caliber, and then a half of that would take, so that picture that you can see now displayed, the smallest expansion, that's caliber and a half, and that takes 610 meters per second.
Thank you. So next question is from René. Will CX replace GMX?
Yes, it will. Yep, the GMX was a great bullet for us, and it did really well all over the world. Its terminal performance and its accuracy was really well documented, and we looked at ways that we could make that bullet better. And we found enough ways to make it a better bullet by reducing the drag and increasing its effective range, that it's morphed into what is now the CX, and the CX will replace all GMX moving forward.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Marco has a question. This question is for a friend that is a hunter on the Alps, hunting mainly roebuck, chamois, and some deer. So the question is, the shots are usually between 200 and 300 meters, but frequently with solid no-lead bullets. He has to pass through shot with almost no expansion and the animal going away almost showing no wound. Do you have a solution for that?
It sounds like he's shooting, I don't know what bullet he's shooting, but it sounds like it's not expanding very quickly. And that's something that we address by using a polymer tip like the flat point that's found on the ECX or the heat shield tip found on the CX. We see expansion within 2 inches of penetration with either of these two projectiles. So we do get that dramatic expansion, and by using a copper zinc alloy, it does expand pretty quickly, but it holds together. So I think at those ranges, 200 to 300 meters, they're not terribly far away. So you'll have plenty of velocity to expand the bullet. He just needs a bullet that expands a little quicker, but still holds together. This bullet will still likely give a pass through, but I think either of those two options is going to be a better option if he's not getting very good expansion, because these things they begin expanding very rapidly.
Yeah, that's for me. If I may add to Seth's points, is it looks like he's whether using a bullet that needs more speed at the target. There's some bullets, some older designs which need a higher intake speed than 610 meters per second. Some stay at 650, some even stay more. Or he's using a caliber which doesn't give the speed downrange, So that's, go back to my example, make a calculation. What do I speed have on the muzzle? What BC has the bullet? Make a calculation what speed you have on the target, and you might find the problem around there. But the CX is probably a good answer to that question. The CX is made for that, and if that is from his perspective or barrel length or caliber not enough, then maybe choose a faster caliber.
Right. Or another good option would be to see if we offer his caliber in the Superformance line, which achieves, what'd you say, 30 to 50 meters per second faster velocity with no increase in chamber pressure.
Yeah.
And that'll feature a CX bullet.
Okay.
Okay, so Gregory, hi. Do you plan also use those bullets in law enforcement products line in 300 BLK? Especially, I understand this more civilian oriented presentation, so you can also come back later directly by email if you prefer. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I can say this, that the material that we're using in the CX and the ECX bullets is absolutely being applied to law enforcement and military type of applications. We've been doing that for a while here in the US, and I know that's expanding into international markets as well. Those specific bullets, the CX and the ECX bullets, I'm not sure if those will be used in any law enforcement type ammunition. We usually tailor a specific bullet design to a specific application and cartridge when it's used for law enforcement. So I can't give a specific answer, but I can say yes, the material, our copper zinc alloy that we use, is absolutely being applied to law enforcement.
Perfectly. Thank you, Seth. Prandini. So can we say that CX bullet is preferred on high velocity caliber such as 6.5 or 25 to 6, and ECX bullet is preferred for lower and heavier caliber such as 30 to 06?
Personally, I would say that would be an inaccurate assessment. I would say both bullets are really well suited to any cartridge because they have the same velocity requirements for expansion. If anything, I would say that the ECX bullet might be favored by cartridges that are a little slower, simply because they have a larger surface area when they impact. So they'll be a little bit easier to expand as velocity slows. But generally, no, you could have either bullet in any cartridge at any speed, and they'll both perform as designed.
Okay, so the last question in the chat, it is, do Hornady prepare some new non-lead bullet for muzzle loaders? So
far this year and in years past, we have one non-traditional muzzleloader projectile that did use a sabot. But as far as this launch goes, and as far as products ready to go to market, we do not have any new designs in non-traditional muzzleloading bullets, unfortunately.
All right, but the monoflex is there.
The monoflex is there for sure for 50 caliber.
So we have an option.
Okay, so I would like to have a look on the questions which we received in advance from Petros. With which kind of metal the PB will be replaced? What will be the form of this metal?
So I think what he's referencing is a traditional bullet we would call cup and core. So the cup's made of copper and the core is made of lead. And I think he's insinuating, like, are we going to put a different metal inside a core? And at this point, these two bullets are a good example, and our GMX was as well. There is no core, there is no jacket. There's simply one homogeneous piece of copper zinc alloy. So it's not so much that we are replacing the core as much as we are redefining the bullet, that there is no core, there is no jacket. It's one solid piece of copper zinc alloy. I think that's how he's asking the question. Jens, you might.
I think the only exception, or to add to this, is the NTX design, which is a cup and core bullet, but the core is made of a non-lead material too. That is an alternative to varmint type fragmenting bullets. It performs pretty much the same way like the VMAX, I think, and it's just non-lead alternative. So there is an option too. That is, I think there is a compressed, what is it, tin copper?
It's a copper tin kind of ground into a powder, and they compress it into a pellet, and then we seat that in as the core. That is true. Yeah, that's the NTX bullet. And again, like you mentioned, Jens, rapid fragmentation. These things really come apart quickly for small varmint applications.
I think, Jens, this question will be answered from you very shortly, as you already mentioned in your introduction. So Rebecca asked, please give the current status of using lead ammo in the EU and UK.
Yeah, I said that is non-topic for our talks here, because it will, it's too much to go. And we leave that up to the leading associations that from our industry. They're doing a great job, and we support those associations. But we leave the lead of this discussion to those, because it's a political thing, and they are really good at that, and there's a lot of effort going into there. Hornady supports it technically from the back through SAMI, but that is something in the EU that we have to wait what the outcome is of those discussions. And for their country, it's mostly run by, if there is not a law yet, then it's the thing that is run by the Hunting and Shooting Association in the country. So BASC, for example, in the UK could answer what is their point on that.
Yeah, thank you, Jens. So Burkhard is asking, what is the future of historical muzzle loader shooting with Plumpen bullets?
Good question. Good question. I mean, again, is a question. From my perspective, there is no need to replace lead in shooting sports, since there is mostly a closed circle in the range. So lead is a very good material to be recycled. You need a very low energy to recycle it. It is safe to be used in the closed circle, from my point of view, at least. So we will see. I mean, that is what the outcome of the political discussions of the associations will bring.
Next question is from Ralph. In which areas, disciplines, or calibers, weapons types do you see obstacles regarding the transformation from using lead-based to lead-free bullets?
I think one of the biggest hurdles will be when you make a bullet out of a monolithic material like copper zinc alloy like we use, or pure copper. To get a certain weight of bullet, the bullet gets really long, much longer than a traditional lead core bullet of the same weight. And the longer a bullet is, the more twist in your barrel is required to get it properly stabilized. And I see that as being one hurdle as far as weapons go, that the twist rates in the barrels will have to become increasingly fast to stabilize these longer monolithic bullets. I see that as one hurdle. There's probably certainly, I'm certain there are more hurdles than that. But from an accuracy standpoint, in regard to shooting discipline, if someone's a target shooter, a monolithic bullet is capable of incredible accuracy, just like a lead core bullet. From a manufacturing standpoint, lead core bullets are traditionally a little bit easier to make. However, a monolithic bullet can still achieve incredible accuracy. They do cost a little bit more, but from a shooting discipline standpoint, competitive shooting and target shooting and such, I don't think those will be negatively impacted at all. Jens, there might be some more European or international type applications that I don't see, but that's just what I.
No, I mean, the target shooting is pretty much the same all over the world. There is not much differences between Europe and the US and other parts of the world from my perspective. I said 22 LR is another example where obviously manufacturers are struggling to find an equal way. And again, the discussion isn't over, so we don't know yet if that has to come at all. So.
Okay.
Thank you. So Fabian has two questions. Lead-free bullets could be obligatory in the future for hunting. So following questions would be very interesting. First question, using lead-free bullets means frequent chemical bore cleaning to keep accuracy. On average, I have to clean after 30 shots. Is there a bullet in the development that behaves more like a typical jacket bullet?
Well, I would say the material we use does foul less than pure copper. It is unfortunate, but homogeneous bullets do foul more than a lead core bullet because they're not as forgiving. So as the bullet engraves into the rifling, that material that's engraved has to go somewhere. And so it does leave deposits in your barrel. But the copper zinc alloy is significantly better in fouling less when compared to solid copper bullets. So we've helped mitigate that as best we can. One option, we don't do this, but one option would be if you made your bullet slightly smaller in diameter than where you make it now, it would have less friction. However, accuracy would suffer. So that's something that we avoid. We do not do that, but by using the copper zinc alloy, we do mitigate some of that fouling problem.
So thank you. So this second question is, what about barrel erosion compared to lead-free and lead bullets?
At least in our testing and in our laboratory, we've not been able to track a demonstrable difference in erosion in the barrel or in the throat between lead-free bullets and traditional cup and core bullets. Both materials, as rugged as they are, they're engraving into barrel steel, and that barrel steel is significantly harder than the bullet material. What we do see has more of an effect on throat erosion is overbore cartridges that have a really large amount of powder and a really small barrel diameter. We can say with fact that wears a throat and a barrel out sooner. However, the difference between a lead core bullet and a copper zinc alloy bullet in our laboratory, we've not been able to demonstrate a difference in throat erosion between the two.
Okay, so the last question from Fabian is again to your product development. In areas with high population density, hunting with lead-free bullets poses an increased risk. Is a remedy in bullet design in sight?
I wouldn't agree to that conclusion that there's a higher risk. I mean, first of all, if you do a proper hunting practice, you only shoot if behind the animal is only ground, solid ground, and then the bullet will disappear in the ground. That is the way that is being taught in the hunting schools, and that is good practice, and also by law, that's the way it should be. If there is a higher risk, you can always go to a fragmenting bullet, But again, that is not the solution. The solution is, find the right angle to shoot at an animal with the right backstop. And that is the answer. And since more than 10 years now, lead-free bullets are used in hunting in Europe, and we don't see an increase in accidents, not to my knowledge. So hunters are obviously doing good practice and only firing with a proper backstop, and so that is not really a major concern.
I agree with you, Jens, exactly, that the obligation of the hunter is to know what lies behind his target. And from a bullet performance standpoint, if you mentioned a fragmenting bullet, that you really sacrifice terminal performance on game, where you risk wounding the animal, even with a well-placed shot, if you don't get the penetration that's required to effectively and quickly dispatch the animal. So I think you nailed it.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody who has a question is the last chance, because there is one last question in the chat from Torben. Is the tip on the new ECX bullet similar to the tip already used today on the GMX X on the 9.3 millimeter?
Yes. Yep. It'd be the same material and the same design, very similar shape. We've used that in a couple of bullets over the last year and a half or so, and that design worked really well, and so we've included it now in the full ECX line.
Yeah, so we ask all the questions coming in advance and in the chat. So if there is no question coming up, so we are just receiving some thank yous. So I think we can come to an end. Or do you guys have anything to add at your point of view right now? No? No.
Just other than thank you for being interested in our products, and we're excited about these two new bullets. I think they have a tremendous applicability for anybody hunting, not just lead-free hunters, but hunters in general, because they are devastating on game.
Yeah, so Seth and Jens, so thank you so much for your time, for your efforts, and for the very interesting topic and answering all these questions. So we are now finished, and the talk will be published tomorrow on our YouTube channel. So everybody's happy to share this on social media and so on. So thanks a lot. Wishing everybody a good day and a good evening, and yeah, see you next month. Goodbye.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.
Hope to see you soon in the show.
Yes.
Indeed.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.